You know, when I was raising my children, and I'm still doing that, one of my little girls, her name is Sky, and when she was just a baby, she would love to sit on my stomach when we were in the swimming pool or in the ocean. And she would just sit up there, and she would love to sing. And when she would sit up on there, we would sing this song. And I would put my arms in the water, and she would be sitting up there. She's a year and a half old, and she would laugh. She was always full of laughter and beauty. And we'd sing this song. And as we'd sing the song, I remember going back into my home and writing the words down, because they seem to me that some of the simplest things that we say to ourselves continuously often get repeated because there's such great wisdom in them. Like that quote I used earlier of Shakespeare's, to be or not to be. That is the question. It is the fundamental question that Emerson and Thoreau and Alcott and Hawthorne and Julia Ward Howe and all of these people who came here, Louisa May Alcott, so all of these people were asking these questions and asking people to look at their own lives and to find within them their own divinity and not be doubting that and finding fault with it. And as we would sing this song, I thought it had so much meaning, it had so much sense. And the song goes like this, most of you know it. We would sing, row, row, row. And as we would sing, row, 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 I would think that just means to me, just go out there into your life and be and work and do. Because when you're born, Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese poet, said, when you are born, your work is placed in your heart. There's something that you came here to do. There's no mistakes in this universe. The only mistakes are the mistakes that we have, that we are separate from the perfection into which we were created. Row, row, row your boat. Don't row my boat. Don't row somebody else's boat. Don't try to row a boat that somebody else tells you you should be rowing. Row, live, work your own boat. And how do you row this boat? Always gently. Always gently. Always with love. Always with peace. Always with kindness. Row your boat that way. Row your boat gently down the stream. Don't row up the stream. It takes away all of your energy. And it'll just create a counterforce of frustration for you. Get in the stream of life and row your boat gently down the stream with the currents of life, with the great Creator. Merrily, always with joy, always with cheerfulness, merrily, 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 merrily. And you know, Thoreau put it this way. He said, our truest life is when we are in our dreams awake. Because life is but a dream. Let's sing it together just for a minute. Together. Ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. That's all it is. It's just a dream. God bless you, and thank you for coming today.
You have to understand there are some things that you believe, and there are some things that you know. Now, your knowings are different from your beliefs in that your beliefs are handed to you. Your knowings all come from within. Everything that you know because you got it yourself. No one handed it to you. Like I watched the Winter Olympic trials a while back. And when I was a young boy, I was going to become a professional ice hockey player. And I used to go skating every single day. And then I let go of that when I was 18 and went into the service and spent some years overseas and all of that, and came out and went through all of the things of my life. And I get to now where I'm 52 years old, and I'm watching the Winter Olympics with all of my children. And I say to my kids, we're all sitting there, and I say, yeah, I can do that. You see that Christy Yamaguchi over there? I can do those things. You can't do that, Dad. Come on. I said, yeah, I can do that. I used to be a great skater. I can twirl, and I can skate, and I can go backwards, and I can do figure eights and axles. I can do all of that stuff. I used to do all of that. Come on, Dad, you can't do that. I said, yeah, I can. I really can. So we have occasion to go to up into Massachusetts, and I'm putting on my ice skates after 34 years. Haven't been on skates in 34 years. And I lace up the skates, and I'm getting ready to go out there and skate, and the kids are all like, oh, he's got to... And I go right out there, and within 15 seconds, I'm doing what I was doing 34 years ago. Skating, twirling, going backwards, doing all the things that were just second nature to me when I was growing up in Detroit, down on the Detroit River. And the interesting thing is that the body that knew how to do that in 1958 is dead. There's not one cell left in it. Yet the knowing is still there. I don't have the same brain. I have different cells. I don't have the same femurs. I don't have the same ankles. It's all different, replaced. And yet the knowing is still there. You see, a knowing is metaphysical in nature. Somehow, beyond the physical, transferred to the physical through some process that we can't even begin to comprehend. The knowings that you have in your life, like I know I can swim, I know I can dance, I know I can make love, I know I can walk, I know I can do all of these things that I have a knowing about, all came from within you, and all of the things that you believe in were handed to you. So consequently, your knowings will never let you down in times of crisis, and your beliefs will almost always let you down in times of crisis. Those things that you believe in are handed to you, and those things that are handed to you come with doubt, because someone else is giving it to you. This is what you're supposed to believe, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you do it. Yeah, that's great, and you're going to... But then there's a doubt attached to it. But that which you know isn't. Now, unfortunately, most of the things that we know as individuals also are in the area of what we know we can't do. We know what is impossible, what can't be done. So if I were to ask you, can you be in more than one place at the same time? You know, can your body be here, and can it be someplace else at the same time? You said, no, you can't do that. And if I said, well, could you transport yourself from here to, say, Montana or Spain just through the power of your mind? You'd say, no, you can't do things like that. If I said, well, can you enter someone else's dream? You know, go into dream consciousness from the waking, go into someone else's dream and become a character in their dream voluntarily. You say, no. Can you fly? If you come across a tree, can you jump over it? Can you levitate? There's a lot of things, and those are just some of the extremes. But I want to remind you of what one of our spiritual masters said to us through St. Paul. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. Just let that into your consciousness. Because now we're talking about someone who is changing shape and raising the dead and feeding the hungry through the gift of manifestation of fish and loaves. Changing water into wine. The ability to be able to create a miracle mindset for yourself is not available to you if doubt is in your consciousness, because what you think about is what expands. And if you have doubt, you will act on the doubt. You can't act on anything else. What you think about is what expands. The ancestor to every action is a thought. So if your thoughts are that this is not possible, that's what you will act on.
The other line that came to me in A Course in Miracles, where it uses the word problem, said this: if you do have a problem, the only problem you have is your belief that you are separate from your source. The moment that we took on this idea that we were separate from our source and no longer believed in our own integrity of our own mind, the moment that we took on that, we began to develop something called problems, something called illusions. And I'd like to suggest to you that every problem that we have, the way I see it, is nothing more than a mistake or an illusion. And how do we do something about these mistakes that we have? They are in our minds. You know, it says very clearly in most of the spiritual literature, as a man thinketh, so is he. Emerson, one of the people that we revere, who lived right here in Concord, said that the ancestor to every action is a thought. Once you start to understand that what you think about, your thoughts, is what expands and becomes your life, you start getting real careful about what you think about. Real careful. So that when you have a thought that says, gee, I got a sniffle, it's in my nose, but tomorrow it'll probably be down here in my throat. And on Wednesday, it's probably going to be here in my chest. Always seems to happen this way. And on Thursday, I'm going to have a fever. I get one every time. You can just about count on it. I'm going to have to take Friday off. Now, it's Monday morning, and you got a sniffle, but in your mind, in your thoughts, you're taking Friday off with a fever, and lo and behold, your body begins to react to this thought, which is just a mistake of the intellect to begin with. Supposing that you had a belief system that said 2 plus 2 is 7. For some reason, you were just hung up on this idea. And you said 2 plus 2 is 7, and you took your calculator and you reformulated it in such a way so that it would appear to be 2 plus 2 is 7. And then you tried to balance your checkbook, and you tried to make your life work based upon this formulation, that 2 plus 2 is 7. You would find that your life would be out of balance financially virtually all of the time. Every time you push that button and push those numbers, nothing would ever work. So the question is, what do I do in order to correct this mistake in my thinking? And that's where the word solution comes in. But we can't bring the solution in until we understand that everything that we have, do you know that every relationship that you're in right now, every single person watching this, every relationship you're in is in your mind. You can't get behind the eyeballs of another human being and be them. All you can do is process them through your thoughts. Now, if your thoughts about the person that you love are about what is wrong, about what you don't like, about what they ought to be, about what they used to be, about how they disappoint you, about how bad they talk, about their language, about anything at all, if that's what you're thinking about, what you think about is what expands, more of what you're thinking about will continue to show up in your life, whether you like it or not. It's one of the great ironies. I always tell people that if you understood this concept, the best way to do it is to put it in terms of money. If I had $1 million, and I were to take this $1 million, and I were to give it to you, and I'd say, this purpose of this $1 million is for you to go out to the mall, and every store you come to where you see something that you really like, you're to purchase it. Any place you go, whatever you like, you purchase it. So you take this $1 million and say, this is great. You walk into the first store that you see, and there's a rug there that's just appalling. It's hideous. It's just awful. It doesn't match anything in your house, and it costs $10,000. And you look at that thing and say, ugh, I would never want that. Here's $10,000. Send it home. Now you go to the next store in the mall, and it's got a lamp in it that matches the rug. All right? And you look at this hideous lamp, and you say, that's the worst-looking thing I've ever seen. Send 2 of those home, and they cost $5,000 apiece. So far, you've taken your money, and you've spent $20,000 of it on what you don't want. And all day long, every time you saw something that you didn't want, you spent your energy, your money, on sending it home. Then you get home and you say to yourself, why is my house filled with all of this stuff that I don't want? And the answer is, you're crazy. This is called insanity. You have energy to spend it on what you do want, yet you continue to use it to purchase what you don't want. And the metaphor here is that your thoughts work exactly the same way. The energy that you have for creating what you want is in your thoughts. And if you want your relationship to be divine and to be perfect and to be beautiful, then you have to begin to think the kinds of thoughts that are going to create that for you. If, on the other hand, you put your thoughts on what the person isn't, what they ought to be, what they used to be, what you think is wrong, you'll see more of that showing up. And it works in everything in your life. Changing your mind, changing your thoughts is how we change the problems, if you will, that we face in our life.
The ego and awareness cannot coexist together. The ego is a kind of thinking that says that who I am is what I have and what I do and what other people think of me, and that I'm separate from everyone else, and I'm separate from God, and I evaluate myself on the basis of this. And many of you grew up with this idea that who you are is what you do, what you accumulate, what other people think of you, your reputation, and so on. Thinking with awareness is thinking from the highest place that there is. It's the kind of thinking that allows excuses to be eradicated from your life. It's the thinking that is talked about in the New Testament. With God, all things are possible. Now you tell me, what does that leave out? What does all things are possible leave out? Nothing, does it? So when you think from a place of awareness, you think in terms of, instead of using one of these excuses that you see popping up here on these little thought bubbles across the stage, I can't do it, I'm too tired, I'm too old, it's going to be difficult, it's going to take a long time, which is all the ego stuff which promotes these mind viruses and these memes. Instead of that, when you think with awareness, your first thought is, no matter what it is, if you get a cold, if you get if you hurt yourself in some way, your first thought isn't, oh, this is something I can't do anything about and I'm going to be hobbled and I'm going. Your first thought is, with God, all things are possible. With Source, all things are possible. It doesn't mean that you're instantly healed and the cold is going to go away, but you set your mind on a new way of looking at virtually anything that comes into your life. All things are possible. And getting to that place in your life it's one of the most beautiful things that you can experience. And I try to practice this over and over again, whatever it might be, whether it's a family crisis, whether it's a financial crisis, whatever it may be. Instead of saying that with the economy and it's going to turn down and terrible things are going to happen and I'm going to lose my job, you have a thought, an affirmation within you that says, I can handle this. I am not alone. I can make myself get through this. I have the solution is going to be out there. I may not know what it is, but my thoughts are always on it's possible. So that's the first of these principles. The second of these principles is something that I call alignment. Hear this and hear this well. All excuses are misalignments. And when I say misalignment, I mean you're misaligned from your source. You came into this world from this perfect, this beautiful place. I quoted it many times from Albert Einstein when he was asked a question about quantum physics or something. Again, it's a paraphrase. He said, all of that are just details. He said, I just want to learn to think like God thinks. That's really what alignment means. You think like the source thinks. And if you get to that place, you have to understand that whatever the creative source in the universe is, whether you call it the Tao or God or source or divine mind, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't need any excuses, does it? It doesn't ever say, well, I'd really like to create some rose bushes here, but I'm too busy. My hands are tied. I can't get to that right now. I'm a little old. I've been doing this for a long time. It's like, I'm tired. That's all I ever do. It's like it doesn't do that. It just allows. It just allows. That's how you want to think. And every excuse that you saw coming up in these thought bubbles out there is really just a misalignment. You want to move to that. A third principle is called contemplation. Aristotle had a wonderful quote. He said, "Contemplation is the highest form of activity." That what you think about isn't just a thought that pops into your mind, but that when you think from a contemplative point of view about what it is that you would like to create, you aren't just having a passive thought. What you're doing is putting into practice an action. It's a verb, contemplation. It's a verb. It's a way of acting. And I brought with me here tonight a few points written by a great man who lived in the early part of the last century. His name was Thomas Troward. And he was one of the authors of how to deal with the science of mental health. He listed the specifics of what happens when you contemplate in a certain way. And I'd like to share it with you here. These are the steps of contemplation. Now listen to these. I'm just going to spell them out one by one. First, number one, contemplation is the continual use of your thought process. That's what it is. Your thoughts, number two, your thoughts are actually like things that act to begin the process of materialization. They begin this process of attracting into your life what you want. If you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, using his words, you have the same power as originating spirit. You got to really hear that. If you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, that is, if you think like God thinks, like Source thinks, like that which creates everything, then you have the same power as the Source. When contemplation is a match to originating spirit, you gain the cooperation of divine mind, attracting and fulfilling your desires. But our thoughts can never be on these excuses. You can't use those. Contemplation is therefore, according to Troward, a kind of action in and of itself, which sets into motion all of the creative forces of the universe. That is, as you begin to contemplate from a perspective of all things are possible, and I can create what I want for myself in your life, you set into motion the creative forces that are operating in the universe.
The fact is that most of us in our culture define who we are and how well we're doing, and even our very humanity, on the basis of some very artificial criteria. Those criteria, most of the time, are considered by people in our culture to be the ultimate. And they are things like success. How much success do I have? That is, how much money am I making? How much stuff comes into my life? How many accumulations am I able to get? And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But as a criteria for your very humanity, it's a very low point. It's a very shallow place to determine whether or not you're living the kind of life that you're capable of living. Another one is performance, which we tend to laud in our culture and to almost worship. I'm number one. You see it all the time. People making a contest out of life, and performance being measured in terms of how far I get and what position I achieve in life or what awards I have granted to me or whatever. And the other is achievement. How far have I gone in my profession? How am I looked at by my peers and by other people in terms of my grades and my position on the ladder of success within a given corporation, things like that. These are almost like the ultimate in our culture, in the business world, in the educational world, in the entertainment world, whatever. We're always talking about success, achievement, and performance. What has happened for me, and what has happened for a lot of people, particularly in some of my recent books and tapes and so on, is that after you live this life for a while and you find yourself achieving a lot of things and performing at a very high level and being labeled a success by all of the external standards, you soon discover that there's an emptiness to that, that there's more to life than just being able to do that. That emptiness and that shallow feeling, and that it's just sort of almost like a selfish pursuit, gratifying one's ego and proving that we can accumulate as much stuff as we can, and success isn't any longer measured in terms of how we serve others, but in terms of how much I get for myself. and our goals become obsessions, not that we need any more, but that we've fallen into this trap of believing that we have to accumulate more, we have to get more, we have to perform at a higher level. If we win the championship, that's great, but how about doing it 2 times in a row? Nobody's ever done that before. And if we do it twice in a row, well, now we've got to do it 3 times in a row. And now we have to do it by shutting out our opponents completely. They can never get a point. And we are constantly looking outside of ourselves for these kinds of almost artificial ways of defining ourselves as human beings. And when you get trapped into that, you find that there's a lack of a sense of fulfillment.
A parenthesis in eternity. He said these words. He said, then there are those who reach a stage in which they realize the futility of this constant striving and struggling for the things that perish, things which after they are obtained prove to be shadows. It is at this stage that some persons turn from this seeking for things in the outer realm to a seeking for them from God. And that has been probably the major shift in my life, taking the focus in my life off of the things, the accomplishments, the acquisitions, the reputation, ownership, which we begin to identify ourselves as, and to begin to recognize that Pierre Teilhard, the great French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his outrageous ideas in 1918, he said, you're not here as a human being having a spiritual experience, that it's the other way around. And you've all heard it, that we are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And beginning to live our life from this spiritual place, it's place of spirit, where we recognize and identify ourselves not on the basis of what the ego says, which is on the basis of what we have and what we accomplish, what we own, and what others think of us, not based on our belief in our separation from each other, and most egregiously not based upon our belief in our separation from God. A shift, if you will, to an awareness of our own divinity. And from that place, what is possible for all of us.
And that's why the Jung quote where he says that what was true in the morning will have at evening have become a lie. And you're literally living a lie, trying to fulfill a destiny that has been imposed upon you by all of these, by society and by the right people and so on. But in here, there's music that you came here to play, and you came here to play that music. Intention, the field of intention, is asking you to play that music and to take the risks and to do whatever it is that is required of you. This is just all long habituated thought systems that if we challenge them and begin to see that they're not even true, they're all lies. So it's like we live in a world in which all things are possible, in which there's no accidents, there can be no accidents, there's an organizing intelligence that supports everything in this universe, and we live as if who we are is this little microscopic separate thing who's always got to do things a certain way and fit in a certain way, and none of that is true.
Here's what I tell people who suffer from anxiety, and I did it when I was a practicing therapist for many, many years back in New York, is that if I were to give you an assignment, I used to tell a patient of mine or a client of mine, if I were to give you an assignment to go out, and here's a bucket, and I'd go out and I'd like you to fill it with anxiety, and just come back, and then we'll look at this anxiety stuff, because they use words like I'm having an anxiety attack, as if anxiety is something that's out there and it attacks and it's going to come and get you. And the insightful part of that little exercise is that that anxiety is just an illusion. There's really no such thing as anxiety in the world. The only thing that there is there are people who are thinking anxious thoughts, or they're picking anxious thoughts. And once you have a recognition that anxiety isn't something that's out there any more than fear is out there, any more than depression is out there, and even sadness, and even the reverse, happiness and so on, that these are you know, there is in a novel that I wrote many years ago called Gifts from Icus, she says that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. You know, it's like you have to bring peace to what it is that you do, because you can get anxiety from going out into your garden and picking all the weeds, you know, and just saying, oh my God, these weeds are causing me to be so anxious. Or you can go to the garden and say, I bring peace to the garden, and I can enjoy all of this thing that we call weeding, you know. And so I'm doing it either, you know, it's like, it's this whole idea that we live, you know, loving people, as I often say in my stationery, loving people live in a loving world, and hateful people live in a hateful world. It's the same world. You know, it's like we just get to decide. And your husband, once he gets that, and once he has an awareness that anxiety isn't something that comes from other people doing these things, it's like I said at the beginning of the show, there are so many people out there who are looking for occasions to be offended. And I see examples of it all the time, especially with the new social media and going on Facebook, and something will be posted on there, or I'll be wearing a certain thing, or there'll be maybe a little grammatical error or misspelling or something, and I'll see this people that get offended, and they get all upset, and they write real nasty comments, and they really think that what I wore at my daughter's wedding is causing them to be upset, when in fact, you know, what's causing them to be upset is internally, this is how they choose to process that kind of an event. And once you unchoose that, you know, decide no longer to view things in a judgmental way, the whole world looks so different, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It would be like going to the doctor and telling him all of your symptoms, and the doctor says, oh boy, you've got a lot of symptoms.
And he starts writing out prescriptions. You need a prescription for this symptom, you need a prescription for that symptom, and finally he gets this 4 or 5, and you go to walk out, and you say, well, I'd like my prescriptions. He said, no, I'll give this one to your mother-in-law, and I'll give this one to your neighbor, and I'll give this one to your daughter, and I'll give this one to your father. I mean, you're the one with the struggles and with the difficulties, and expecting somebody else to change or something outside of you to get better in order for you to make your life work at this level that I'm calling intention is something you have to really take a hard look at. It's in here.
Happiness is not something that you strive for, that you go after, that it is something that is always within you, and you can have it anytime, anything that you're doing. Not very many people get a hold of that. They think there are happy things to do and unhappy things to do. Happiness is available for you anytime you want it, whether you're cleaning out your closet, whether you're sitting on the can, whether you're changing your baby's diaper, whether you're working on a project that is exciting for you, whether you're going on a camping trip, whatever it is that you're doing, that happiness is something that's available to you.
It isn't the events, the things that take place outside of us that make us unhappy. It's what we do with them when we do find out about them. And we always have a choice. We always have a choice in how we're going to react. So we have a tendency to blame the things that we don't like for our anxiety or our stress or our unhappiness. But the fact is, if we didn't know about them, as I used to tell my kids when they'd come home and say, so-and-so said something bad about me, I said, if you didn't know about it, if you didn't hear about it, if no one had told, could you be upset? And they said, well, of course not, Dad. How could I be upset about something I didn't know about? I said, well, that's the whole point. It didn't cause you to be upset. You caused it. You caused it. No one can make you unhappy without your consent. And that's one of the great secrets of the universe.